Namo Guru Dev Namo Om Namo Guru Dev Namo Om Namo Guru Dev. And then I'll sort of like just layer, and then it'll start to change halfway through.
So Tash is a life coach and business coach and spiritual mentor. So ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅੱਜ ਇੰਟਰੋਡਿਊਸ ਕਰਾਉਣ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹਾਂ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤੇ ਹਨ ਵੂਮਨ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਪਾਵਰਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਵੀ ਤੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਇੰਪਾਵਰਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੱਜ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹਨ ਅਮਰ ਕੌਰ ਸੰਗੇੜਾ ਅਮਰ ਸਾਈਕੋਥੈਰੇਪਿਸਟ ਹਨ sikhtherapy.com ਦੇ ਫਾਊਂਡਰ ਵੀ ਹਨ
The thing is, I work a lot with basically breath. I work a lot with meditative practices to bring people into. So we will start with basically coming into a slow breath and just elongating the breath to bring people back into their bodies and to bring us calm. One of the major things that I work also with is a navel point. So the belly in and pulling the navel up has a sense of actually harnessing the power, bringing people back into their bodies.
Conscious and the subconscious. So we have this very logical way of being around systems that have made us operate in a way that we need to operate, like our living life, our mortgages, our getting a loan or getting a car and all of that. And then we have this duality, which is the complete opposite.
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਜ ਮੈਂ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤਾ ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਕੌਰ ਸੰਧੂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸੇਵਾ 'ਚ ਅੱਜ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਕੋਚ ਹਨ ਸਪਿਰਿਚੁਅਲ ਮੈਂਟਰ ਹਨ ਤੇ ਲਾਈਫ ਕੋਚ ਵੀ ਹਨ So Tash is a life coach and business coach and spiritual mentor. So ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅੱਜ ਇੰਟਰੋਡਿਊਸ ਕਰਾਉਣ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹਾਂ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤੇ ਹਨ ਵੂਮਨ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਪਾਵਰਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਵੀ ਤੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਇੰਪਾਵਰਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੱਜ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹਨ ਅਮਰ ਕੌਰ ਸੰਗੇੜਾ ਅਮਰ ਸਾਈਕੋਥੈਰੇਪਿਸਟ ਹਨ sikhtherapy.com ਦੇ ਫਾਊਂਡਰ ਵੀ ਹਨ ਤੇ ਇਹ NHS ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੰਮ ਵੀ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਵੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਥੈਰੇਪੀ ਦੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ ਸੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਹਨ ਕੁਲਬੀਰ ਕੌਰ ਵੀ ਸਪਿਰਿਚੁਅਲ ਮੈਂਟਰ ਹਨ ਇਹ ਸਿਸਟਰ ਸੈਂਚੁਰੀ ਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸੰਸਥਾ ਦੇ ਫਾਊਂਡਰ ਹਨ ਔਰ ਇਹ ਅਲਟਰਨੇਟਿਵ ਤੇ ਹੋਲਿਸਟਿਕ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਹਨ ਸੋ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਵੂਮਨ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਪਾਵਰਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ਾਂ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਓ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਅਮਰ ਨੂੰ ਕਹੂੰਗੀ ਕਿ ਅਮਰ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟੈਸ਼ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਟਰੋਡਿਊਸ ਕਰਾਓ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਰੋਤਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਸਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ
Hi, welcome Tash. My name's Amar and I'm a psychotherapist and founder of sikhtherapy.com. Right, so I'm going to start again, okay?
Okay.
Right, okay. So welcome Tash and welcome Corbett. So Tash, you are a business really gain their authentic selves by creating a business out of what they love. So there's a lot of passion in what they do, which is fantastic. We really need people like that. So thank you for coming on the show. And I wanted to just say that you're in Brighton, but obviously you work across the nation, don't you? You sort of support people everywhere.
Yes.
So just wanted to welcome Corbett. So welcome to Corbett. She's absolutely amazing, a sister sanctuary founder. So you offer lots of retreats for ladies and women only. But you've also got a corporate part to your business as well, where obviously you do lots of partnership work in education. But now, you know, we thought we'd bring you together because there's lots of events and holistic, spiritual conversations that we're going to have today. So we're really looking forward to having you both on the show. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tash, can I just ask you if you could introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Tash Kain. I basically am the founder of Soul Coding. And the idea behind Soul Coding is to make the idea of soul, make the idea of the greater part of ourselves, make it more tangible for people. Because a lot of the times when we speak the language of spirit and we speak the language of soul, it can feel like something that's out in the ether, something that's out there. And the idea is to bring it into the cellular structure so that we're walking with our own soul guidance. The other piece of what I do is bringing people into alignment with the work that they're here to do on the planet. There are people that are coming forward now who are coming forward with gifts, or they've trained in certain ways to actually help people to align, to help people come back to center, to help people to heal, those kind of things. And so I am really invested in seeing people with those kind of things, basically messages or gifts or callings to rise in terms of their business, to make it sustainable, to thrive, so that they could do more of the work that they're here to do, basically. There's something that's really gives me a lot of pleasure inside of seeing people actually really succeed in what they're here to do. Because I feel when people are really stepping up to that soul calling, everybody around them wins, and they also feel like they're fully integrated into what they're here to do, basically. So that gives you a bit of a snapshot.
Thank you. Really beautiful. Thank you. And Corby, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, how do I follow that? That was very beautiful. Thank you, Tash. So I kind of have two hats, which align very nicely with what Tash does. So in one part of my life, I work in a corporate business, and we deliver services to assist learners in academic retention and completion. So as just a support service, and I'm the National Partnerships Manager there. On the other side of things, after a number of years of having illnesses and looking for holistic ways of healing myself and not, being overburdened by chemicals to try to heal myself, I went through a very long journey of learning about a range of therapies and practices. And then it dawned on me that actually, I was very lucky that I had the disposable time to be able to do that. And when I looked around me, the most, important people in my life were busy women. They had children and husbands, and they're always thinking about everybody else. And so I thought, how do we bring back this knowledge, this ancient knowledge and wisdom to everyday people and make it accessible? So I started something called Sister Sanctuary, and we're just a small community at the moment. We're growing, but I run day retreats for women in Sheffield at the moment, and they will come along, and each retreat has a theme. So we've had looking at one at perimenopause and menopause and holistic and natural ways to help when women are going through that wonderful phase, but often they need support. We've looked at looking at sprucing ourselves up for summer and how we get ready for that. So we've explored Kundalini yoga, sound baths. We've had a nutritionalist in talking about gut health. We've had a lady in teaching us about gua sha facials. So, offering everyday women a taster of the holistic therapies that are out there. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you. Tash, can I ask you about, that coding thing? What is the meaning of coding in your project?
With coding, I actually, so I've used the word coding to bring people into a step-by-step process of how they can actually connect to themselves. So within coding, the C is consciousness, and it's basically how, we start to switch on the consciousness around the world and how we're interacting with it. O is observation. So observing ourselves inside of what's happening. D is making a decision, making a firm decision in terms of where we're going and what we're doing. I is integration and is basically rooting and integrating into what we're doing. N is nurturing, and G is gratitude. So it's basically a framework and a system. So the coding piece is a framework that I've put together, and that really helps people around their decision making and around their choice making, and around basically how they maneuver through their lives.
Okay, thank you. And what is like, like when you say self-leadership, what do you mean by that, please?
Well, this is such a massive topic. I mean, basically, I could go on forever.
In a short.
I know, exactly, right? It's like, because I could go on for a long time about that topic. Basically, in terms of business, and in terms of people sort of stepping forward, starting a business or even going forward in a business, there's an element we have to come to a trust of our inner navigational system. And we also have to be able to recognize the things that can trip us up. So the challenges that can come up, things like procrastination, things like self-doubt, things like comparisonitis, like all of those kind of things. Things like things not going very well. You know what I mean? I've built this thing up and then it's now crumbled and I've got to rebuild it. You know, those kind of things. And quality of our self-leadership, the quality of our word to ourselves, the quality of basically our commitment, the quality of our resilience, those kind of things is so incredibly important, you know? And to also know that there's so many people on the same journey, like there's so many people who are on that journey, you know, that basically, basically that they're trying to get through things as well. So sometimes when we're in business and we're doing certain things, we think that it's just us on our own. We think that when things don't go very well, that basically, you know, no, it doesn't happen to anybody else but us. And so there's this real sort of sense as well of understanding that this is a human growth element, you know? So that's a snapshot of self-leadership. It's basically coming home to the inner navigation and beginning to really trust that element.
And how do you do that in your projects?
Well, with self-leadership, it's actually going through, so this one I take soul, the word soul, and I kind of break it into a framework. But it's actually going into the things that can trip us up. So basically going into all of the levels, or at least 12 of the levels of attractions that can come up around business and around where we can trip ourselves up when it comes to leadership, and then how we go from the contracted state into the illuminated state of those things. So for example, if we take self-doubt, what I've looked at self-doubt as a contraction, and then the other side of self-doubt is really being able to trust your intuition, trust your own navigation, and then basically, you know, what is a contracted state? What is the expanded state? How do we move from contracted to expansion? And I do that with 12 different elements, basically.
So how your project can bring the changes to the today's like Asian woman or Black woman, or those who are actually not like, you know, coming out to in their own block, we can say, you know, blocks they have. How will you advise somebody like
yes,
that?
For me, it's very practical, the work that I do. So I bring them into just basically the practical elements of what certain emotions feel like, what certain feelings are when they're in certain states. So when you're in the self-doubt state, for example, you've got this sort of sense that you're looking outside of yourself for the answers. Whenever you turn inside, you can't seem to trust yourself. So it starts with this kind of sense of headlessness, a sense of mindlessness, searching outside, the sense of hunger, the sense of emptiness. And that's really at the heart of self-doubt and the emotional element. The feeling element is like running from pillar to post, asking everybody else about what the answer is. Even people that are not in no way qualified to give you an answer, you assume that everybody else has the answer except for yourself. You know what I mean? And so even just recognizing these elements can be a huge thing, because you start to be able to switch that on when you see it happening in yourself, when you feel it happening, you start switching it on. The other thing is, I work a lot with basically breath. I work a lot with meditative practices to basically bring people into. So we will start with basically coming into a slow breath and just elongating the breath to bring people back into their bodies and to bring us calm. One of the major things that I work also with is a navel point. So pulling the belly in and pulling the navel up has a sense of actually harnessing the power, bringing people back into their bodies. And when from that state of like pulling the navel in, if you then begin to ask a question of yourself as to what the next step is, where do I go from here? The access to the answers are a lot more grounded. And it's also a lot more sense of basically trusting yourself inside of that. I've got somebody who's basically at my window.
Not dissect it all, but you've hit on some really, really important points for me. The really prominent one that stood out was how you're making this spirituality, soul connection, and going into yourself within a business world. Because actually, as time is going on, business is growing, everything is technology, and we're always constantly bombarded with outside noise, which disconnects us as humans from our core. And there are people that can look at him in a religious way and in a traveling way, but actually within the business world, it's a kind of a pretty much a new concept. And actually, within the business world, in my experience, there's so many things at play, so many factors going on, as in, are you climbing the ladder? Are you in a role where you may be perceived in a certain way? Are you the right gender for that? Are you all of these things, and also the challenges of jobs and qualifications and things like governance and compliance and all that stuff that goes on, that actually it can be easy to forget your core self and how that belongs in business. But when that energy is harnessed and when one can try to tap into that, it inevitably radiates around you, and you can bring certain people who want to be brought on the journey with you. So it is for the inner good and the greater good as well. So yeah, absolutely, it is something that, because I'm kind of doing the sister sanctuary, but I work in this corporate world, and I love it, don't get me wrong, I love my job, but I also love my spirituality, and it is something I've been thinking quite a lot. And there are kind of significant shifts in business, I think, where people are becoming more in tune with well-being, definitely mental health, etc. But is it quick enough, and is it spiritual enough? Not for me. Like, we could take this into business and have such a massive impact, but like I say, the soul coding and tapping in is great, but the impact it can have on the world in general and everybody around you, and bringing teams along with you and carrying that positive energy. When you trust your instinct, you radiate goodness. And I think it's amazing. Really, really, really good idea. And I'd love to be able to, bring a lot of that, even more so with Sister Sanctuary, which is not a corporate thing, but into the corporate world, because to do business deals for the greater good. So like I think you said it earlier, it's a win-win. When something's a win-win-win, that is my favorite formula as well. Nothing can stop us then. So really good to hear what you do, and really looking forward to finding out more.
I would really love to say something to that, actually, because I too was in the corporate world. I used to work for the BBC. I also worked for United Business Media, and that really ramps spirituality up massively. there's such a disconnect in that world at some point. And I've made a reference between the performance, because we have business performance where your revenue performance, your bottom line performance, how did this perform, how did that perform, versus the performer and the person that you have to be in order to bring the performance through. And sometimes that time that the disconnect from yourself inside of that is rife in that world to a large degree, right? So for me, it really started, it ramped me up, because I was like feeling that level of disconnection and really desiring to connect with truth and honesty as well, because sometimes in the corporate world, and this is not every factor of the corporate world, but basically sometimes there is also this real sort of sense of not being really true. It's very transactional. I'm here to have a meeting with you. We're talking about this, but my end goal is that, so there's a real transactional element inside of what goes on, which means that sometimes people aren't necessarily being the truth of who they are. And that also was the disconnect for me. It made me really unhappy in places. So I can actually very much hear what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And Amar, you want to ask something?
Tash, it's really nice to hear from you and Kolbir how the intermix between life, right? So it's a little bit like the conscious and the subconscious. So we have this very logical way of being around systems that have made us operate in a way that we need to operate, like our living life, our mortgages, our getting a loan or getting a car and all of that. And then we have this duality, which is the complete opposite of let me be as free as I can, let me be that inner child, let me bring out who I need to be and how I need to be. It's a bit of a dichotomy, and as you both know, the corporate world is very different, but the people in the corporate world are urgent, we're really reaching out for any type of voice that will hear our inner voice. As you said, we're hearing our voice, but we want somebody to come in and help us really bring that out and pull that out in us. So really nice to hear a few stories from yourself. Like, if you could maybe explain a little bit about your own journey, what allowed you to really let go of United Business Media and bring yourself into this spiritual zone where you can make this your holistic practice, your whole thing?
Well, basically, as I was saying, like the disconnect was huge for me. And inside of that disconnect, because I was working in media advertising, it's very much a world that, it's about networking, it's about entertaining, it's about being out, it's about being visible, these kind of things. But because inside of that also you've got the transactional piece, it's about going to the meeting to get the deal. It's about meeting that person, but the end goal is this. It's about, getting the client, getting the revenue, getting the bottom line. There's a lot of getting inside of that, right? And you can be very good in that, but because of that disconnect, it makes you feel a little bit sometimes like you're a bit on a treadmill, like you're not really having real conversations, like you're not really connecting to people, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And because of that disconnect, it really started to make me feel like, okay, what are the connection pieces? What are the connection points? How do I go to work every day and be my true self? How do I go to work every day? And even if I'm connecting with businesses or I'm connecting with clients, how do I go to work every day and have real conversations with people, really care about people, really care about, the outcomes that they're having, that those outcomes are good for them as well as us, like the win-win situations. So it set me on that reconnective journey. Do you know what I mean? That reconnective journey also, I had a curiosity. Energy and energy work has been a huge thing for me. It's been a huge love of mine as well. So I had a real curiosity about how energy works in the body and how it shows up in the body. So I ended up going down this side route of massage, and the massage was kind of like a laboratory kind of scenario for me. I trained as a misuse, but the idea was so that people would come in and I could actually really understand their energy and energy flow, right? From there, I ended up going over to Thailand, studying Thai yoga massage, and that kind of really switched something for me as well, because it's so integrated into the culture. It's so integrated into the everyday life. So where you were saying that that's a dichotomy, that we've got the spiritual element of us that's more airy and playful and youthful, and then we've got the get the mortgage, get the income, get the, you know, all of these. And in what I was witnessing in Thailand is like there was no dichotomy that way. It's like it was really, people would go for a massage after they went shopping, or they would go for a massage so they could turn up into their business meeting with full presence. That idea for me was just like, you know, it was so different. So that really changed a lot for me. And then things started to open up from there, you know. Before going to Thailand as well, I ended up, so while I was still in the BBC, and then from the BBC I moved to UBM. So while I was still in those two places, because of the ramping up of the desiring to actually really understand how to reconnect, I started on this journey of getting reflections and going to different things and really kind of learning a lot more. And I did a self-hypnosis course with this guy who was like 70 at the time. He had throat cancer, and he still had throat cancer when he was doing that session. He talked with a real deep rasp, like a whisper. But the whole time you were there, you were thinking, this guy shouldn't really be he shouldn't really have the energy to be doing this, but he's doing it. So he's like a full testament of hypnosis and basically being able to hypnotize, self-hypnosis. But that also really opened me up massively as well, because what it really showed is that our world isn't set in stone, and the things that we truly believe are the things that we're creating. Like hypnosis really showed me that. And if you can actually get yourself to embody something, that will find its way in front of you. There's no two ways about it. But the embodiment piece can always be like the more problematic, you can say, or challenging piece, because you have to deal with the parts of yourself that doesn't quite believe that, or is not on board with that, or isn't a match for that yet, you know? So I'm saying all of that to say, basically, the environment of corporate, as much as I loved my time in corporate, the environment really sent me on this deep inner journey of reconnection and being able to connect with people on a deeper level.
I think it does force you to do that to a certain degree. If you have if you're on the journey, on the ladder, anywhere on the ladder of self exploration or spirituality or holistic, anywhere on that, I think if you are within that environment, it's one of the hardest things to do. But it does make you kind of look at yourself if you are that way inclined. I think it's definitely done that for me. And to kind of, if you're leading people and you're, you know, I'm very aware that people's energy affects mine, and mine affects those of my team, and then fellow managers and other people around me, which then affects the service that we deliver, which then affects the customer. You know, it's a domino effect. And in order to have that self-awareness, it does force you in. And I think it's amazing what you're doing, and it's a really brave thing as well for anybody to commit themselves to that journey. But only through going through that can you come out the other end and you know, I think really reap the rewards, because you can align your inner self and work through all of what you know, people might want you to be or perceive you to be, or the self-doubt or the anxiety or behaviors that you're not used to, and how do you deal with them, and what parts of you are unearthed when that happens. Only through going through that and facing that can you be a better, in a more calmer place. Actually, it takes, for me, it takes going through all of that turmoil to arrive at not always peaceful waters. We know life doesn't work like that, but you know, as much as you can be, and like I say, it has a ripple effect. Yeah, it's great what you do.
Same.
So Tash, how can we empower the next generation?
How can we empower the next generation?
Yeah, with all those self-doubts, fears, and fear of change, and the environment they are staying, and
that's a huge
technology.
Question. that's a huge question, and the reason why I'm saying that is there's some people coming through in this generation, this generation, you know, the 20-year-olds, the 18-year-olds, the 15-year-olds. I am in awe of some of what's forward at the moment. In fact, it makes me emotional.
That's what I'm saying.
Makes me almost emotional because it basically, there's a level of switched on element, and it's not across board, but you know, in a lot there's an element of switched on. There's also this element of having access to a lot more wisdom, a lot more knowledge, and a lot more ways of connecting. So in terms of basically empowering this new generation, I feel that there's something here around the technological piece, and there's something here around the human connection piece. I think those are the two pieces. Community doesn't mean the same thing as it used to, and there's a real necessity for us to guide people in why community is important, why connecting with people is important, because there's you know, there's a lot of connectivity around emails, for example. In the corporate world at the moment, younger people don't like talking to people. So like basically the whole idea of picking up the phone and talking to someone is kind of like some sort of like new concept, you know. You know, send a message or send a text message, that's how it is, right? And so there's sometimes a losing of the human connection that can happen in the digitalized arena that we're in at the moment. So I feel like community is the biggest part of where we can lead younger people to. Also, the other piece of being digital as well is that it can actually create isolation. So it can create this idea that you've got like loads of Facebook friends or Instagram friends, or but basically you and of yourself, you're very isolated. And sometimes we can lose a connection of how it's important to have different reflections in our environment. So like you know, 20 people who see us in completely different ways, that can bring us home to ourselves in different kinds of ways. You know what I mean? That disconnect from community creates a lot of mental issues, I feel. You know what I mean? Like people go to doctors, they go to psychologists, they go to you know, therapists, because you know, mental health is an issue, and ultimately often the biggest part that's the issue is that the community is lacking. You know what I mean? There's no physical touch community going on or not enough of it, you know? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And you know that you are organizing so many events, and I was reading about the masterclass you are organizing about holistic song share. Can you just explain a little bit about that, please?
So basically, I love mantra. I seek, like basically, I study Kundalini yoga as well.
Oh my God, so do I. I mean, as soon as you said, sorry to interrupt. Wow, this is just really, I'm Kundalini mad.
Yeah, it's massive, isn't it? So obviously in Kundalini yoga, there's all the mantras. But mantra has always been a huge thing for me anyway. Like mantra, you know, the understanding that the vibrational repetition of a phrase can reconstruct our DNA in some ways, right? And so I've been always looking, like I sing a lot, so I was always looking for a way to share mantra. And I came across this guy called Haji Basim, who, I mean, I think he plays around 9 instruments, but what really connected me was he has what is called a loop station, which is basically you use your voice and you use sounds to actually layer and create music. And so he's been my teacher in terms of the loop station, which allows me to actually use my voice and create some really in-depth mantra. So he invited me to come to share some of the mantras.
I see. Very nice. Nice to know about that. And as you sang, you said that you sing a lot. So is it possible you can sing a little bit for us?
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Please.
Okay, what shall I sing? Oh my gosh.
Let you sing a mantra.
Anything.
Yeah. Well, for example, if I'm in the shower, Ong Namo, Guru Dev Namo, like if I'm in a shower, I can, that's one of the things that I would sing a lot. I sing a lot in the shower. So Ong Namo, Guru Dev Namo, Ong Namo, Guru Dev Namo, Om Namo Guru Dev, and then I'll sort of like just layer, and then it'll start to change halfway through. And start to do different things, and that's one of the things that I love about the loop station, because it can layer sort of like deeper voice, then mid-tone, and then higher tones. So you sound your one voice sounds like a choir come the end of the whole thing, which I've been really, really enjoying. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tash. It's nice having you today here. So I think if Kulveer and Amar agreed, we really enjoyed today, meeting you and all those things. It's really very inspiring. And in the end, I think it was your birthday yesterday.
Yes, it was.
So we didn't sing it in the beginning, but we would like to sing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hope to see you again with maybe another meeting we will have, because we only have a little bit time today. And I want to say thank you to Amar and thank you to Kulveer as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you so much.